and be simple in that way. And so just a beautiful tradition. I had met a couple of people that were involved in the movement and during the pilgrimage in that area. So, okay, let's begin with Geeta Dhyanam. Yes. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters of the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf, and people of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay. The yoga of the Supreme Spirit. So we'll continue. Yesterday, reintroduction of the Ashwata tree, the peepal tree. And do we see so in the relationship of the seed, which is transcendent, you can say like this. And it must be. We took time yesterday again with the pure logic of Vedanta in Upanishad workshop. Right? And granted, it's inference. Life is not the way it seems. And we have to realize that at some point in order to open ourselves for it to be something other than it seems to be. But as long as we hold on to the notion that it's exactly what I'm perceiving with my senses, that it's I know how it is and it's this way, like this, as long as we hold on to this, then the cup is still full and there's no room for anything. And in time, of course, the universe will break us of these notions, You understand? Yeah. And so that's when the cup begins to empty so in the discussion yesterday that the things, we follow anything to its more subtle reality. We follow the cup to the clay, and the cup ceases to be. It's an appearance or a form or a name and a form of clay, right? And we follow anything back, we get finally to no thing. But the no thing cannot be a void, and that was the discussion yesterday from Shankaracharya. It can't be a void. It seems empty. It's certainly empty to the senses. It's certainly empty to the senses. You can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, right? You can't feel it, you can't hear it. But still, it's nonsensical that when the thing disappears, that what remains is an absolute empty void. And the point was made by Shankaracharya, if that were the case, then the thing, the apparent phenomenon appearing, would also be empty. Because if it's coming from emptiness, then the thing itself is empty. And that's not so.
Everything is reused.
That's not so, yeah. So therefore, inference, therefore, and this is what is being dealt with here, is from this, what seems to be a void, but which is actually full. And it has to be full because there's everything here. Mm-hmm. And then how do the things grow? As if the tree. But the root, the seed itself, is the transcendent. And then we get to see how is all of this growing. And it grows, it keeps on going forever and ever. And this is where we pick up this morning. There's no end to it. We used to think that there was one universe. And that you can't even get your head around because the universe is infinite. But that was the concept. So the universe was born. Kartikeya said something about this yesterday. The first one, but then the first one, but it's the same. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference because the first one has a reality, and that reality is the reality of every single one.
Well,
that's the same remaining reality. No, it doesn't make any difference, Kartikeya. You have to listen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking it could imply that the universes don't necessarily need to come back in. If there's infinite space, they could always keep.
There's a dance. There's absolutely a dance, and there are in everything manifest and unmanifest states. In everything, there's manifest and unmanifest states. Oh. So, okay, we pick up here. So, its form is not perceived here as such, neither its end nor its origin, nor its foundation nor resting place. Having cut asunder this firmly rooted peepal tree with the strong axe of non-attachment, then the goal should be sought for, where having gone, none returns. I seek refuge in that primeval Purusha whence streamed forth the ancient activity or energy. The English in this may be a little tough. Whence means from which streamed forth. From which streamed forth the ancient activity or energy. Ancient activity or energy would be the beginning of the universe, like that. So, from which came the Big Bang. We can say it like that. And as we were working with this yesterday, we'll pick up the commentary here. It's beautiful. But just to come back to this place where we had come to yesterday, is just as the cup is not a cup, and it was never a cup. That's a delusion. It was always clay. And the cup was never other than clay. And the cloth was never other than wool fibers. Right? The mind says cloth. And that's the only place cloth exists. It says a mental construct, you see. And the mind says cup. But the cup only exists in the mind. The clay, if you went into clay consciousness, you would realize clay is always clay. But then if you go deeper, you see earth element consciousness. And it's always earth element. And then you go deeper, and you see Adi Parashakti consciousness, the first vibration consciousness. And there's only that. And then you go deeper, and you see Purusha consciousness. And all of these are in the same sea. It's a question of level. And in the Purusha consciousness, there's no disturbance. There's nothing happening. There's the appearance of this. I appear as this. I appear as that. Yes? It's a question of level. But the cup doesn't exist not independently so. It appears to exist, and that's fine. We work with things that appear to exist. But the reality of it is Purusha. The reality of it is the transcendent. The reality of it is the causeless cause. It has to be. Now, our situation is we're getting tossed about. You say boo to me, and I lose myself, for goodness sakes. And we can speak to, and we do speak to, the nature of why it is that we're getting tossed about, but the simple answer is because we're identifying as what we're not. We're taking our identity as what we're not. So what's the solution? To take refuge in what I am. That's what's being pointed to here. So I take refuge in that Purusha from which the Big Bang came. I want to go back all the way to the beginning because I want to practice non-disturbance. I want to be undisturbed. Huh? And why? Is that a selfish desire? Is it a selfless desire? That's a funny one. Because, it's just what is. You could say selfish desire. Okay, fine, I want to be at peace all the time. But you could say selfless desire. I want only to radiate peace. Right? I want only to radiate love. I don't want to contribute to any disturbance here. And so now that latter is more likely to be a motivator to get you all the way there. And so yoga then is this taking refuge in our reality. It's not a renunciation of the play of life. In fact, it allows a reveling in the play of life. It allows living the play of life in a way that's non-disturbing, where the light is being revealed and the way is shown. And so it's not a running away from duty. It's not a running away from anything. It's a revealing. It's an allowing. It doesn't even mean that the role will change. It might. It might not. So here, the cosmic tree, commentary, the cosmic tree which has its root in the transcendental being shares its characteristics. So whatever a thing comes from has to be the deeper nature of the thing. So the cosmic tree, this tree of life, which has its root in the transcendental being, shares the transcendental being's characteristics. In other words, the characteristics had to pre-exist. The personas had to pre-exist. The personalities had to pre-exist. It helps us to get to why it's being called the supreme person or the supreme personality. We'll often hear that from the ISKCON brothers and sisters, the supreme personality of Krishna. Now, it's not just the name Krishna, but it's pointing to the Purusha, to the supreme, to the transcendent. But that transcendent has to include all of this as potential. What is hidden in the root becomes manifest in the tree. We were talking about that yesterday, right? The tree. What's hidden in the root becomes manifest in the tree, yes? So the leaves are hidden in the root, aren't they? And then when you water and provide the nutrients and all of this, now it's not looking like sand. So the sand, the earth element, is actually coming into contact with the design of the tree, which is in the root, which is in the seed, right? And then, so that leaf, that branch, etc., were hidden in the root. It's not that they didn't exist before. You just didn't see them. So, it is all God. It is all God. And only God. Yet, whereas we are ready to admit that God is indescribable and imperceivably subtle, we boast that we know what this world is. And he says, that is a mistake. We only see what we wish or fear to see. The world outside is a cloud with forms and figures projected onto it by our mind. The cloud is real, but the forms are not. The substratum of the world is real, but the appearance is a manifestation and projection onto it of our own likes and dislikes, fears and delusions. So we want to see it a certain way, or we don't want to see it a certain way. But both, this is law of attraction, isn't it? We want to see it a certain way, or we don't want to see it a certain way. Whichever it is, we'll see that. But these phantoms are the offspring of attachment. Non-attachment removes them, enabling us to perceive the underlying reality. And he says, think of a banana. The skin adheres to it and seems to encase it, but peel it and the fruit is left perfect. Such is the spirit of non-attachment in the Bhagavad Gita. Do your duty, but do not get attached. Neither must you let detachment make you neglect your duty. The banana is like the soul, not to be held and encased by its skin body, that must eventually be dropped, leaving the soul to attain moksha, liberation. This discussion the other day, I said we'd get to that. There are different ways of helping us to drop the notion that I am this body. There are different ways to do that. One of the ways is to look and see all these defects in the body. Ultimately, are there defects in the body? Of course not, because all is God. Okay. But it is a mechanism when we're attached. And what does attachment look like? Normally, our concept of beauty is that beauty is relative to non-beauty, which makes us paint half the world as not beautiful. You see? And so that notion is a notion that comes from attachment and seeking something beautiful here without being able to see the natural beauty that's inherent. So in this case, then a sadhaka would be told, look inside what you're saying is beautiful and see that that's not where the beauty is. Does that make sense? So it's our issue is not the object. There's nothing wrong with the body. But when I say my body, there's something wrong with that. It's not the body. It's the concept of mine applied to it, or me applied to it. That's an error. Yes? So now how do I correct the error? What's the mechanism? What does the Lord say to me in order to help me to correct the error? Well, two things. See me. Yes? And by the way, if you can't see me, then look at that body that you're calling beautiful and see it. Swami Shivananda would say, think only of God. And what does that mean? Every single moment. And if you can't, then think of death. It's the same. So it's just two ways of addressing. Attach, detach. Attach what? Attach to the Purusha, attach to the infinite. See it everywhere. Relate only to it as love, as life, as light, however we relate. But see it in the forms, not the forms. See it as it were wearing this form. And this form. See it wearing the form of the cup, or the form of Mary, or the form of like this. And so that was the discussion you were having. Yes? Yeah. And so don't hold on to the mechanisms as absolute truth. Don't hold on to the teaching mechanisms as absolute truth. Okay? They're pointing to it. But even this body that's being called ugly on the inside at one moment is nothing but God. and God is beauty. The only issue we're having is we're attached to a different notion, to a different idea. We're unable to see it, and it has to be broken. That attachment has to be broken in order to see what's really here. Ultimately, the way to break it is to relate and attach to the transcendent, not to the forms. And I would say any mechanism that gets you to let go of the attachment to the forms is divine. And the idea is it must be this way or it must be that way. Because clearly Purusha is all-inclusive if both of these ideas exist. They both exist within Purusha. Both notions that you were talking about. Yeah, those both exist within the causeless cause. Otherwise, they couldn't be here now and being expressed. So see where they're coming from. Keep looking deeper. And then learn to see that in all, as all in it, and take refuge in it. And then we talk about freedom. It's funny when two people are arguing about a point. I say, well, they're both right. Because from the perspective, and by the way, who is it that's arguing? Well, you could say God is arguing with herself. And if you can see that, you'll laugh. And you'll come back into the center. Because Purusha is a state of both being and not being. Oh my God, we break our head. But in other words, being is within Purusha, or an expression of Purusha. Non-being is a deeper aspect of Purusha, but Purusha is both. But the being has to exist in seed form in the non-being. The waves have to exist in seed form as the depth in the ocean. Yeah? If there's no depth in the ocean, then there are no waves. Yeah? So the waves have to have their existence in a deeper level of consciousness. And they pre-exist. So the more deeply we're able to see, then the more we're free. In this way. So it speaks of in the commentaries, beautiful commentary, he speaks of this last about I seek refuge. He says, I seek refuge, is said by Krishna, is only initiation where he teaches Arjuna the formula. He who takes refuge in the supreme Purusha returns not to this world. Now that doesn't mean that you leave the body. No. There was never a world to begin with, my dear. Not in the way you think it to be. Not in the way you think it to be. This is God. This is all, we are living in God. And life itself is God. It is the divine. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't play our roles. It doesn't mean we leave the body. My God, at some point it doesn't make any difference. I'm in a body or I'm not in a body. So what? So what? And don't forget the astral body. The astral body is body also, but so what? It wasn't the body that caused our suffering. It was the identification with it that did. Non-identification with the reality here. And by the way, who can blame us also? So forgive everyone who can blame us, because it seems like we're doing just fine. Sattva is on the roll in the mind, and now we can see, and then, by the way, a shadow comes, tamas, and now I don't see, and now I want to do this, or I want to do that, right? You see, that's of the mind. You do see that. Yeah. But it's like we get sucked back into it again. And so that's really the thing that we're wanting to end the cycle of. And to do that, we take refuge in Purusha. To do that, we take refuge. We take our being, and we absolve ourselves of wanting something here. Right? Whatever is to be is to be. We'll do our best. We'll serve. We'll do our best to be present. We're going to share the light to the extent that the Lord wishes for us to share the light, and to the extent that we're given the capability to do so. But do I want something here? No. If you offer, great, thank you. So it's that. It's this identification as a limited entity, and then grasping something in order to prop up the idea. And the answer is to let go of the thing you're grasping and allow yourself to be as you are. And serve as you're to serve. And enjoy life. I mean, it's hard to enjoy. Here Arjuna is prepping for war, right? And we all have our wars to fight in the world. And so we're being prepped for them. And then we find ourselves in the middle of the battlefield once again, right? And somebody says, boo.
Gets me every time.
Maybe it's not you every time.
Thank you.
There we go. Very good, Mary. Thank you. God bless you. So, he who takes refuge in the Supreme Purusha returns not to this world. You see, we're trying to bust some myths here also. The myth is that in this world means in this body, in this place. But the reality is you've never been in this body or in this place. This place is a place that you imagine because it's a place of good and evil, of right and wrong, of north and south, of hot and cold. It's a phenomenon. It's not the noumenon. It's not the reality of it. It's an appearance. And the appearance is fine. It's beautiful if you can see what's here and if you can relate to what's here. So we take refuge, returns not to this world. So we don't get caught up once again in the delusion. This is what it means. Even the tendencies that were arising, they become shadow, cloud. The mature seeker surrenders the idea that he is somehow distinct from the cosmos. The drop joins the ocean and becomes the divinity of the ocean. The oneness cannot be fragmented. It is indivisible. Hari Om Tat Sat. Questions or comments?
I found it helpful to view like the judge in me that judged everything.
Yes.
I did,
Yes.
you did, and the
Yes.
other person did.
Yes.
And when I started not judging myself and loving myself and looking at myself as a program, that I was programmed a certain way.
Yeah. When you say yourself here, you're meaning the little s.
Yeah, the little s. That to let that go with non-judgmental behavior to myself. And once I started to love myself, I found a peace. And I was able to radiate that outward and not judge you and you and you.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I got from the talk today. It reminded me of when I was in that progression of giving up, you know, and then it was just joy.
Yeah, very good. The practices are limited practices. The renunciation is wanting to be unlimited. I'm neither this nor that. I'm neither right nor wrong. I'm neither north nor south. I'm neither good nor bad. And the expectation of what's to come, and the expectation of what's coming, the idea of what's coming, all of this, the practices are helping purify the instrument, the intellect. And the renunciation is finally wanting to be, but it's step by step. And I speak from experience here, because when I started pilgrimage, for example, when I started walking, I had the example of Peace Pilgrim who walked carrying nothing and asking for nothing, and I couldn't do that. So renunciation also. Our dear sister Yashoda is practicing a beautiful renunciation. She has decided that she's going to serve, and she's doing, and she'll do her best to bring delight and be beneficial and to connect. And she's resolved to herself, I will ask for and expect nothing. And she's living in this spirit. And she says it's so tough. But she's also experiencing much light. So, but she had to be ready to take that step, you know. And for each of us, when we talk about practice, it's to the mind, this seems a void. Still, to the mind, the divine seems a void. So within us, we have this going on, and it's incorrect. And this is what we're looking at. It's incorrect. It's an incorrect assumption. And we see signs of that. And according to the signs that we see, we need to step into that apparent void. Right? And as we step into it, more is revealed. So fear is there, Hari. We talk sometimes about the fear. Yeah, it's there. And you know, I can't say that there was no fear when I started on pilgrimage. That would be a lie to say there was no fear. But at the end of the walking pilgrimage, I would not lie to tell you there was absolutely no fear whatsoever. Completely fearless. And that's not something that there's pride of or anything else. It's just an observation of the way it works. We face it in the light, and we step as much as we can. And more light comes. So, but these principles, these teachings, which we see to be correct as we go through them, we also, before we let go of everything, we hold on to them. Before we let go of everything. And eventually you find those teachings in your own heart, in your own being. And they are made manifest. But until then, you hold on to the Shastra.
What is Shastra?
The teachings, the Dharma teachings. The teachings of the way of the light. Okay, let's close final prayers and arati. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukneva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukneva Bandhanan Mritor Mukshyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Makashit Dukhabhave Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityur Mahamritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble our Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. That's right for Arti.